Right, before we get the beef cooking, let's just get the onions and the peppers chopped up so we're ready. You don't have to be you don't have to be super fine with this. Just chop it up nice and coarse. It's all going in the same pot, don't worry about it. I think a chilli is a lot like, you know, a bolognese or a lasagna or kind of any kind of long-lasting classic homemade recipe. You know, everyone's really got their own version of it, and there'll be, you know, huge debate among different countries and different cultures as to what the perfect chilli is and how it should be made and what should go in it. But for me, this is just a nice simple version of a chili con carne that'll feed 4 people handsomely, and is a classic weeknight dinner. You know, in places like America and, you know, Mexico and over that part of the world, they take the chilies very seriously. I mean, they have competitions about it, you know, and it's either their way or the highway. So much effort and concentration goes into it. That doesn't mean that you can't apply some of those techniques, you know, in the home kitchen. Talk about things like, you know, browning off the mince. I've said this on this channel before, very important and shouldn't be overlooked. Getting the sweetness out of the vegetables, you know, being methodical about what you're doing with it. It just all adds up to make a difference, and you'll end up with a very nice weeknight meal. So I'm just going to put this hob, got a nice pot here, so I'm just going to put this hob on like maybe a medium heat. This is quite powerful, so we'll have to see how we go. And the first step is going to be to brown off the mince. So while I'm waiting for that to get hot, what I've got here is just 10% beef mince. You could go 20 if you wanted to, but I think that 10 to 15 is a good balance of, you know, meat and fat. You don't want it too greasy. If you was to use something like maybe 20%, I would probably cook this and then pour away some of that fat. Otherwise it just goes a little greasy, that's all. So just drop it in a bit at a time. If you wanted to, you could do this in batches. I'm not going to in this occasion. I think I've got just enough here what it shouldn't overcrowd the pan too much. Okay, so nice sprinkling of salt in there. I'm just going to start to move that about and start to break it down. Only for a second though, because at this point I'm just going to leave it and just let all that water content get released. Okay, so the idea here, like you've seen me do many times before, we want to extract that water content from the beef mince and then evaporate that off. Only once that's happened can we then start to caramelise the beef mince and get the full flavour out of it. If you wasn't to do this step, then it would end up just being very bland and grey and watery. It's not just something that can happen in a couple of minutes or so. You really need to invest, you know, a good 10 to 15 minutes. Controlling the heat, making sure it's not getting out of control, but you still want to, you know, maintain a good heat source. Just have a little bit of patience. So as you can see, most of the water is now pretty much evaporated, and some of it's starting to catch on the bottom. We're starting to get a little bit of caramelisation happening there. So periodically I've just been kind of breaking up the mince and making sure that there's no big clumps in there, because the last thing we want in this is kind of dry, tough little meatballs that are formed because you've not broken down the mince properly. And again, if you think it's getting a little out of control, just knock your heat down a little bit. That's all you need to do. But you need to stay in control of it at all times. You know, level 5 on an induction hob like this, it's going to stay at level 5. It's just going to keep getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. So, you know, it's not set and forget when you're cooking things like this. You need to be in control at all times, because that's when you end up burning things and ruining pans. And if you do think it is getting too out of hand, just throw a little splash of water in there. All that's going to do is just stop things from catching, and it will just evaporate off anyway. So now I'm going to add my onions and my pepper in there. Again, another pinch of salt, ideally in the pan. And now start to stir that through. I'm just going to drop the heat a little bit. It's getting a little bit dry in there. So again, the salt is now going to help extract the water content from the onions and the peppers, so we can, pull that sweetness out. Obviously, you've seen me do recipes before where I've cooked the sort of the sofrito or the kind of, the veg separately to the mince, which, perfectly happy for you to do that with this. But in this instance, I'm just going to throw it straight in there. I fully understand that people have got lives and you've only got a certain amount of time to get food on the table. So if you're not able to, cook each element individually before, bringing it all together, then, throwing it all in, it's not going to do you any harm whatsoever. Just going to throw a little splash of water in here, just because I think it's getting a little too dry and I'm not quite at the point yet where I'm happy that I have softened the onions and the peppers down enough. So, I don't want to reduce the heat too much, because then everything's just going to boil and become, kind of watery. But at this point here now, I can still maintain my heat and nothing's going to dry out too much. Okay, before we start adding the rest of the elements, I'm just going to grate in my garlic. And the reason we do that now is because garlic can soften and then go brown and then burn very easily. So you don't really want to be, you don't really want to be cooking out veg for a good, 10 to 15 minutes with garlic in there in a dry pan. And grating it like this on a little microplane is when you get kind of the most intense garlic flavour. Just give that a quick stir through. Now we're going to go in with our tomato puree. As much or as little as you want, really. That's probably about 2 to 3 tablespoons. I'm just going to throw a little bit of salt on that. Again, seasoning as you go. You don't want to just season everything at the end, because then you'll end up with more of like a salty finish rather than something that's balanced and seasoned. You just want to get that tomato puree mixed in there and just to darken it slightly, just to take that little hint of rawness out of it. We're going to balance that off anyway later with the sugar. So let's add our spices now. Got some ground coriander, ground cumin, got some smoked paprika, a couple of those. You can also just use the sweet paprika if you haven't got smoked. Got some chili powder. This is hot chili powder, so I'm just going to go in with half a teaspoon. But if you've got mild, then yeah, go a bit braver with it. Got some oregano, and then we're going to go in with a nice pinch of pepper, and again some more salt. So get that all moved around and stirred in quickly. Remember, there's no liquid in this pan at the minute, so you need to be moving fast, and you do not leave it, do not walk away at this point, otherwise you'll burn your spices and the whole thing will be ruined. Okay, I've got 2 tins of chopped tomatoes. Don't open it like that, you'll ruin your knife. So, in there you go. Okay, so last 2 things to go in. We've got 400 mils of beef stock here. So, I used 800 grams of chopped tomatoes, so half of that in beef stock. Or chicken stock if you don't have beef stock. Sometimes chicken stock is better because it just, it's kind of more of a savoury, kind of milder flavour. Then a few splashes of Worcester sauce. Worcestershire sauce. Okay, let's have a quick taste. Nice. Obviously it's not going to be the finished product right now, but you need to see where you're at, so that when you come to taste it after it's been simmering, you know where you're going. Okay, I'm going to pop a lid on this now, and this is going to sit on the back stove for about 45 minutes, and then I'm going to put in the kidney beans, and then that'll cook for another half an hour or so, and then I'll see you then. Okay, so this has had probably about an hour and a half now in total. After about 45 minutes, I took the lid off, put the drained kidney beans in, and then just left the lid off on a low simmer just to kind of get all that kind of evaporation out and thicken it up nicely. And as you can see, it smells and looks incredible. I do like it on kind of the looser side. You could thicken it up if you wanted to. Like if you was going to have, you know, like a chili dog, for example, you would probably thicken this up a little bit more. But I'm just serving this with rice, but you know, by all means, get yourself some sour cream, get some guacamole, some salsa, some nachos. You know, big bowl on the table, get everyone round. Sprinkle some cheese on top if you want to as well, that'd be phenomenal. That is very good, guys. Honestly, you need to give that a go. So simple. I could have actually gotten away with a little bit more chilli as well, to be fair. Also, if you wanted to, you could sprinkle some chilies on top at the end. That'd be pretty cool. Let us know in the comments how you do your chilies. Cheers, guys. See you later.